In a quiet African village surrounded by forests and a sacred river, a young boy named Kofi is seen as different because he is always talking to nature. While others laugh at him, Kofi begins hearing strange whispers from the river warning that danger is coming to the village. When a terrible drought and a greedy chief's decision push the people toward disaster, Kofi must prove that the voice he hears is real and lead his people to hope. In the heart of a green land, where the sun painted the earth gold and the wind danced through the trees, there stood a peaceful village called Adwana. The people of Adwana were farmers, fishermen, drummers, and storytellers. Every evening, children gathered around the elders to hear tales of spirits, heroes, and the ancient river that gave life to the land. Among the children was a boy named Kofi. Kofi was not the strongest. He was not the fastest. And he was certainly not the loudest. But Kofi had something unusual. He listened. He listened to birds. He listened to trees. He listened to the wind. And most of all, he listened to the river. Whenever Kofi sat by the riverbank, he would whisper, "River, what do you see?" And in the sound of the flowing water, he felt there was always an answer. The other children laughed at him. "Look at Kofi," one boy shouted. "He thinks the river is his friend." The girls giggled. Even some adults shook their heads. But Kofi's grandmother, Nana Esai, only smiled. She would place her wrinkled hand on his shoulder and say, "Not everyone who listens is foolish. Sometimes, the quiet ones hear what the world is trying to say." Kofi never forgot those words. The warning. One dry season, something began to change. The river was lower than usual. The fish were fewer. The air felt heavy. And the birds that normally sang at dawn became strangely silent. One evening, Kofi sat alone by the water as the sunset turned the sky red. Then suddenly, the river began to ripple though there was no wind. Kofi leaned closer. In the soft movement of the water, he heard a whisper. "The land is thirsty. Greed will break the village. Follow the hidden path before the last moon." Kofi jumped back in fear. He ran home as fast as he could and told Nana Esai everything. Instead of laughing, she became serious. "There are old stories," she said quietly. "Stories that say the river speaks when people have forgotten balance." The next morning, Kofi went to tell the village chief. But Chief Kwadwo was proud and stubborn. He was a rich man who cared more about power than wisdom. When Kofi told him about the river's warning, the chief laughed loudly before the whole village. "So now a child gives orders to elders," the chief mocked. "Will we next ask goats to advise us too?" The villagers burst into laughter. Kofi lowered his head in shame. Then the chief made a terrible announcement. "To show strength, we will cut more forest near the river and build bigger farms. We need more land, more wood, and more wealth." Nana Esai gasped. Kofi's heart pounded. The river had spoken of greed. But no one listened. The disaster begins. Days passed. Men cut down trees near the sacred river. The soil became dry and weak. The water level dropped even more. Soon, the crops began to fail. The maize curled under the heat. The yam leaves turned yellow. The fisherman returned with empty nets. Then the village well dried up. Panic spread through Adwana. Mothers worried for their children. Farmers argued in the marketplace. And every face wore fear. Still, Chief Kwadwo refused to admit he was wrong. "This is only bad luck," he said. "Work harder." But the elders were troubled. At night, Kofi returned to the river. Again the whisper came. "Before the last moon, seek the stone of memory. The path of water still lives." Kofi did not fully understand. But Nana Esai did. "There is an old path," she said. "Long ago, our ancestors followed a hidden stream in times of great drought. At the center of the forest lies the stone of memory. It is said the stone reveals the way to living water. Kofi's eyes widened. Then we must go. Nana Esi nodded slowly. Yes. But the journey is dangerous. And few still believe. The journey begins. Kofi gathered a small group. There was Abina, a brave girl with a sharp mind. There was Kojo, Kofi's funny but loyal friend. And there was Nana Esi, who insisted on joining despite her age. At first, people doubted them. But when the chief's own water pots ran dry, a few villagers began to whisper. What if the boy is right? Before sunrise, Kofi and his small group left the village and entered the forest. The forest felt different now. Dry leaves cracked under their feet. Animals watched silently from the bushes. The once lively streams had become muddy lines in the earth. As they walked, Kojo tried to joke to hide his fear. If the stone of memory can also remember where food is, I would greatly appreciate that. Abina rolled her eyes. You only think with your stomach. And you think with anger, Kojo replied. Even Kofi laughed. For a moment, the fear became lighter. But soon, the path grew harder. They crossed thorny bushes. They climbed steep rocks. They heard strange sounds in the distance. Then, near evening, they reached a dark grove of ancient trees. In the center stood a giant stone covered in old symbols. The stone of memory. The test of truth. As Kofi stepped forward, the wind began to swirl. The symbols on the stone glowed faintly. Then each traveler began seeing visions. Abina saw herself standing before the village, afraid to speak. Kojo saw himself running away when others needed him. Nana Esi saw the village disappearing into dust. Kofi saw Chief Kwadwo laughing as the land cracked open. A voice seemed to rise from the stone itself. To find the path of water, speak the truth you fear most. Abina stepped forward first. I fear that people will never listen to me because I am only a girl. The wind softened. Kojo swallowed hard. I fear I am a coward. The trees rustled gently. Nana Esi placed her hand on the stone. I fear I am too old to protect my people. The ground trembled softly. Then Kofi stepped forward, shaking. I fear that even if I am right, I may still fail. There was silence. Then suddenly, the stone cracked open with a bright blue light. From beneath it, a hidden stream burst forth, rushing through the forest floor like liquid silver. The path of water had been found. But it did not flow toward the village. It flowed deeper into the hills. Nana Esi smiled through tears. The ancestors are guiding us. Follow it. The race against time. The group followed the hidden stream through narrow paths and rocky hills. At last, they reached a beautiful spring hidden between great stones. Clear water poured endlessly from the earth into a pool below. Kofi fell to his knees in amazement. This water could save the village. But before they could celebrate, they heard voices behind them. Chief Kwadwo had followed them with several men. He had overheard villagers talking and wanted the spring for himself. His eyes shone with greed. This water belongs to me, he declared. I am chief. I will control it, and the people will obey. Kofi stood up. No. Water belongs to everyone. The chief ordered his men to block the spring with rocks so only his household could use it. But the moment they tried, the earth began to shake. The rock split. The ground groaned. And Chief Kwadwo slipped near the edge of the cliff. He cried out in terror. For one tense moment, everyone froze. This was the man who had mocked Kofi. The man whose greed had harmed the village. Kojo whispered, "Leave him." But Kofi looked at the frightened chief and remembered Nana Esi's words about balance. Without hesitation, Kofi lunged forward and grabbed the chief's arm. Abina and Kojo helped pull him to safety. Chief Kwadwo lay trembling on the ground, humbled and speechless. The spring continued flowing, calm and pure. Then Nana Esai spoke firmly. The land does not bless greed. It blesses those who protect life. The chief lowered his head in shame. Returned to the village. The villagers worked together to guide the water back toward Adwana. They dug channels. They carried stones. They rebuilt with care. This time, no trees were cut without thought. No land was taken without respect. When the first stream of fresh water entered the village, the people cheered with joy. Children danced barefoot in the mud. Women filled their pots with tears of relief. Farmers raised their hands to the sky. And when rain finally fell days later, it was as if heaven itself had blessed the land again. Chief Kwadwo stood before the people and confessed his wrongs. I was blinded by pride, he said. A child heard what I refused to hear. Then, before the whole village, he turned to Kofi. Forgive me. Kofi nodded quietly. From that day on, the village no longer laughed when Kofi sat by the river. They sat beside him. They listened too. And Kofi, the boy once mocked for hearing whispers in the water, became known as the child who saved Adwana. As for Nana Esai, she smiled whenever she saw him by the riverbank. Because she had always known. Sometimes, the future does not shout. Sometimes, those who listen with humility can hear the wisdom others miss. Greed destroys, but courage and truth can save a community.